But then he told me about the gouge. There's just like, oh, that's not. Why is it called worth the gouge?
Well, I know some of the names of the tools, because like it's funny. I wrote roughing gouge you shouldn't use on anything but a spindle, but then a spindle gouge you can use on
everything. Yeah, but the easiest way to remember that is it's the tang. Although on the
But why would you use a 3/4 inch gouge on a spindle?
I use a 1 inch roughing gouge on the spindle.
If you're doing like like.
But that's after you round it off.
No, you'll start square with a 1 inch roughing gouge. We had a demo. It might even be on our website. The guy used to do stairwell
Spindles,
right?
Spindles.
But he would do them 400 to 500 at a clip.
My son-in-law.
I mean, and he would knock a spindle down from square in 11 minutes. I'm talking,
How long would it take you?
day and a half.
Yeah.
This guy did a demo, and after about 18 minutes, he goes, "What else you want to know?" I'm like, "What else?"
How often do you sharpen it?
Yeah.
I just recently, so my company, we have one big conference that we sponsor every year, and it was last week, and now we're known that I make handmade stuff to give out. Because you go to a conference and you get pens and all this other like plastic crap, and we bring people to our booth because last year I made 75 pens. This year I made 150 bottle openers and wine stoppers.
Need a hand there, young fella?
By the time I was a fraction of the way through those, I kept switching up tools, and then I realized I could just do this all with a 1 inch spindle. It's cool. 2 or 3 minutes each once you got it down.
And I know. We used to work the same. So I had him with my
So I did send you an email. Probably should have.
and the usually.
So the last
I have
three
to
meetings,
put on my.
actually,
I keep forgetting to do it until the day of.
That's what I used to watch.
so now I have a YouTube. Slide those over.
I'm sure I can just put a drop-in
There was one
for
tree
a
there that was
No, we got like a widget on there that I'm sure there's got to be something that'll just show like all the, I'm sure there's something that I can just drop
After
in
the
there.
last one, I actually got work. And it was a good one, rolled it.
You know, that's, it's not gonna go, it's not gonna work. They got a lot of food, they got a lot of people. So anyway. So Rick.
I didn't realize what rustic is. Signal went out.
Oh, like running a hotspot data or? Yeah.
The only way I could figure out it. Yeah, if you see that, you can.
I'm sure there's definitely YouTube like widgets that you can pop right. I'm sure there's one that will be able to display this.
How's Roland doing?
Rick had another guy.
A little cooler.
So we split it up.
That is or whatever.
That's a real thing. It's, if you read the history of it,
Thank you very much. I got a little bit of orange peel on the last coat to get the light right, but getting close to figuring out the spray can lacquer appropriately.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
That was that it, really?
Yeah. Just mid-wax spray can. Yeah. A little bit.
and there's churches and cemeteries.
There's a way to do it.
Otherwise, the problem with that last coat was it was very, very bottom. Yeah. So I think, so this piece is done until I get another. I just haven't had a chance to grab a fresh can. I'll probably give it another coat and fix that up. But then I was thinking about what piece to bring on top of bringing this like 40-pound bag of hollowing tools.
Yeah.
So
It's poison.
there's
Oh, is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's poison.
Yeah.
If you breach the,
That's an old one.
like a problem.
7 or 8 months ago.
Yeah, like the berries. The berries won't get black.
No.
The berries, but if you
No,
swallow the
it's-
seeds.
Unless it was an old stock, but no, I bought that
They
straight
showed me a
from
picture
the
of
very
3
beginning of the
bears,
year.
and I went in next to these view trees.
It's just a little dusty, but
They eat berries, they ate the seeds too. And that was it. They were gone.
maybe what size do you have?
Maybe he just.
The
shiny stuff's much
Oh,
more.
yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
That is still a rock solid
Yeah.
piece of equipment.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's
Like when I got the box, I like picked it up off the porch. I was like, whoa! You know?
Yeah.
And then every time I go put it on the lathe, it's like,
Can I ever give
you
you a
know,
platter?
give it a good curl a few times, and warm up a little bit.
So all you need is the tool rack.
That's just a 1-inch post.
Give it to your wife or
Should be
girlfriend,
fine.
a significant
Well,
other.
that's the box, this box English?
Yeah,
Okay.
This is a nice box too.
yeah. I've got the
Yeah.
I've got
Stories are very
the
good.
curved one as
stories.
well, but I
Especially
figured
for
bringing one of them
Yeah, she'll love it.
would give the point.
This is my wife, by the way. This is better than the loose box. I don't have his box.
Yeah, mine's 61.
Oh, yeah? The guy who died.
61.
He doesn't know.
Find a good one. Oh, yeah. So I had a friend, he was a Connecticut State trooper. And he wound up retiring early, 52 years old.
But I bought his.
He retired. His wife died. when he was 50.
Just those that things are around. This is not. Yeah.
It's nice
It's gotta be
to,
really nice to sit.
oh yeah, so it's nice to keep it registered against one of the posts. To keep it straight, yeah.
Let me tell you something. He said, all the older ones are brain dead. He said, all the young ones are crazy, and the middle-aged ones have got issues. So he said, oh, really? He said, and all the good ones are taken. In Rhode Island. Yeah, and in fact, the Wakefield.
Yeah.
You know, and, yeah. My God, this is a Sullivan thing. One of them. So did they were going to take his place.
Oh, yeah, I went with a guy like that. His father met a young man. She took him for everything.
Oh, yeah. No, it's why you take his
He
house.
couldn't get the beach house because the father gave him the beach house to the son. He wanted it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He still got it.
Yeah.
Father, and the father ended up buying it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that. I've seen that a few times.
How are you?
How you doing? How you doing?
All right, with you? Hanging in there. That's all.
Every day.
Are we all hanging in there?
How you doing, Charlie? Good. Hanging in there. Yeah. So we're all doing that.
You didn't rig out all the chairs. People right out there.
And a few,
What happened?
sitting in these things for 5 minutes kills you.
Exactly. All right.
Minute or
10 seconds. Yeah, I think of that. You got a pad?
I got some in there with cushion, I do. I do.
That's solid, right?
No, I have my career furniture, building, fixing tables.
All right.
Hello, welcome to June.
Juneteenth.
Obviously, we're not in the shop, it's too hot. So Roland reached out to people and we're going to do a series of short 15-minute
How you doing?
demos. And
Thanks for coming.
I'm going to start.
No
We have Paul, Nick, Ross, Roland, and Rick. We're all going to speak about 15 minutes each on various topics. So to that in a minute. As far as housekeeping goes, our checking, we're at $1,413 in checking. We have a CD maturing in August. That's at $5,249. We have 5 lifetime members, 26 paid members for a total of 31 members. So Pete is here. He's a new person. Introduced himself to us. welcome. And no one else is new. Everyone else looks, nope, wrong. It's only you who are new. So, welcome. Is that
Turning at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Where you from?
I'm from Avalon.
So Pete was telling us, he's done a lot of spindle turning. And now he's getting into more like bolt turning and other things. So you're in the right place to see different things. That's about it for any old business. I don't think so.
I don't think so. Just
I've got
a,
some old business. Over on the table over there are the shirts left over. We had a bunch of shirts that were printed with people's names on them, but those shirts don't have names on them. They're various sizes, no mediums, extra large, long sleeve and short sleeve. The short sleeve are $35, the long sleeve are $40. And there's 2 bags over there of people that ordered shirts but have yet to pick them up.
Okay.
And if anyone is interested to find out if they have paid their dues this year, I have the spreadsheet up and I can let you know when you paid them.
Yeah, if you haven't paid your dues, pay your dues. And, talk to Pete.
before the year's up.
Yeah. You still owe if you don't pay for the year. New business. I think we're gonna buy a new truck for the group. We're talking
Yeah.
about that maybe
Yeah.
in August.
I think, I mean, I'd like to see maybe the one way, the Stronghold. Anybody have a better idea on that? I know most people bring their own truck, but if we have, somebody forgets one or whatever, and we have a demonstration going on, we've got no truck. Because the truck we have obviously was for the 3/4 inch. So I would think somewhere along the lines of the one way, probably the Stronghold, or even the Talon.
I would get the Talon, because what we do here, we don't need it.
Yeah, you really don't need it, so.
I almost never use my.
Yeah, I mean, I use the Talon. I like the Talon jaws because they're not dovetailed. I love that. So I can't make a dovetail, so I use the Talon with the straight jaws. It's perfect. Yeah, I mean, if everybody's in favor of the Talon, we can go ahead and order a Talon. We don't need it until August now. Just a reminder, no meeting next month.
Yeah, we never have meetings in July. It's too hot. So unless we hear some sort of dissent, we're gonna go ahead and.
Go with the one-way Talon.
One-way Talon, right now online, $239.99.
Perfect.
Just get the $40 one off Amazon from China, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that should come with, I think the 3-inch jaws are 2 3/8 or something to that effect.
This is at Woodcraft and perfect laser, 16-inch or less swing.
Yeah.
Weighs in only at 3.6. Comes with a center screw.
Yeah.
And 1 set of jaws.
Probably the 2 3/8 or 2
And
whatever.
they've got an assorted set of other jaws that you can order for it.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know if we would go with this. Would you think, Roland, would we go with, we wouldn't need jaws other than the standard jaws that come with them?
Yeah, and then people who will need anything that we don't have would usually bring their own.
Would bring it anyway, yeah. So,
That's
yeah,
just
the
a fact.
standard jaws would be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're gonna handle that, Pete? I don't need to get
Yeah.
involved? Okay.
I'd like you to say, yes, that's the one.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it to break. I think we've got some show and tells, a couple of them.
So, yeah, we always do that first. Who wants to show their goods first? For the show and tell, who wants to go first?
I think if we let Nick go first, nobody's gonna wanna go after him.
Okay.
I don't know who all brought stuff. I haven't been here in a few months.
If you could, bring it up to the lathe, Nick, because that way I can get it on the camera.
So I bought the exoticwoodzone.com was doing a 40% off sale on all sorts of burls. And I had a few too many one night and I bought a very large box of them. So this is one of the ones that came out of it. It's like a bit of an emerging bowl, and then I went for like a slight kind of downward on the edges, and then as much as I like turning thin stuff, I can't get rid of the edge on these sorts of pieces. It's just like too unique. And then I'm usually not a shiny person. I like more matte finishes, but then sometimes you look at a piece of wood and it's just kind of begging for it. So I had to hit it with another coat because the end of finishing process was also the end of the rattle can. So it got a little peely on one side, but easy to fix. It's just lacquer. So red molly from.
So did you put anything under the spray?
Oh, actually, that's a good question. So one thing I've turned a lot of molly burl because I think it's gorgeous. One thing about it is no matter how sharp your tools are, it's a burl and there's always little pits, even with a very, very clean cut and sanded down. So I did more time than I'd care to admit sealing it with like super glue and making sure it was all super smooth ahead of time. And then there is a few coats of sanding sealer on the top and on the bottom. The edges are too tough to get sanding sealer in there. So there's some, what is it? It's a cellulose sanding sealer. Comes in the silver can from the UK. I forget the name of the brand.
Oh,
It's good stuff. And then yeah, just the Home Depot Minwax lacquer over it.
Yeah. Nice job.
Thank you.
Tom, the segmenter.
Yes, sir.
Can you go up front to the lathe, please?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good presentation. It kind of makes my cookie jar look simple.
Are you kidding me? I couldn't say. I could not get cuts that good on a solid segment like that. So, no.
Anyways, I decided to make a cookie jar, and it's made of ash, and I have purple heart and cherry in there. And if you look real close, there's a veneer of walnut in there also. And I found a piece of, I think this is maple, and that's what I made my lid with.
Nice.
That's it.
How many segments into that?
I didn't count them all. I think just in the feature things, I think there's 200 there. So I don't know, probably just over 300.
I'd love to do it. So where
I
are
don't
the
know.
cookies? Where are the cookies?
Well, that's it. I was hoping I was gonna donation or something. You know, get donations in this, not just cookies.
There you go.
That's it. Thank you.
That's good.
Went back to Motorola and made a passive cell phone speaker. So it still needs some more engineering problems. I've got the cell phone weight, leaves it unbalanced, but I made it out of segmented. This is part of a cherry sleigh bed. This is the underlying of a desktop that was laminated. And this is the bottom of a tabletop from Malaysia. So all the different woods from used furniture. And does anybody have a cell phone with music? We'll demonstrate. No?
Yeah. Well, I can't use mine.
Can't do it? Let's
Right.
try it.
So where do you get all so you do nothing but reclaimed furniture and all your turning. Where do you get it all? Like,
Just ask people for their used furniture.
okay. All right.
Actually, there's a used furniture store in town, and he sets out stuff he can't use. So I drive by every couple of weeks and
There
see
you
what's
go.
there.
So
Just put it in there.
This almost fits.
success.
Thank you. Now,
What
with
else? Bring anything in.
the different, can you make it like different sizes that it would be different, pick up different tones?
Everything that I've researched says as long as it's conical, it will work. Different cone sizes and lengths will amplify different sounds. And how thick it is, I've tried to make these as thin as I can get them and still put legs on them, but I'm not sure. I'm still experimenting going along. But once I get the formula, I'll be glad to share it.
So I don't know if you ever go on the segmented wood turners site,
there's a fellow on there, I think his name is Jim Greico, who made a horn with a long curving tube. It was really quite cool. You should check that out.
I will check it out. Thank you.
It's a good thing you're gonna put 3 feet on there, because otherwise you'd have to pay.
Did you bring a piece, Jim?
Yeah, I brought my bowl back.
All right.
My dull bowl. Well, it's not quite so dull anymore. So I brought this last time, and I was using, so with the woodworkers back in May, a couple of people from Sutherland Wells came and gave a presentation. And the stuff looked pretty interesting. So I bought a couple of samples. They have several different lines. This is a line that has a little bit of, it's mostly tung oil, has a little bit of resin in it, so it builds up as well. And they use the orange dilimidine solvent, so probably not really drinkable, but it smells kind of nice. And you can, if you want to, you can feel this and get a sense for. It's thin. It's like it's kind of water thin. So there's a sealer for the first coat, and on this one, when I had this here last time I had just put 1 coat of the sealer on, put another coat of sealer on, and then 2 coats of the top coat. And top coat's kind of interesting because you can wipe it on and leave it and let it dry, and then it comes out gloss. Or you can put it on and then wipe it down, and then it comes out more satin or semi-gloss. So I did a couple of coats of that. I don't know if you're familiar with Axe product, ACK.
I use that.
Yeah. So they make a couple of a sanding paste.
Yep.
And a paste wax and sanding. The sanding paste is really, I think, is really nice stuff. It starts off about 1,000 grit, and then as you continue to press it into the piece, the grit breaks down and gets finer and finer. And then there's some nice carnauba wax.
Jim, are you putting that on after you've already?
So this was
That was
finish
before.
everything off.
So you've already got your tongue oil on, and
Got
then
the tongue oil on. Tongue oil's dry.
you went for that.
Then just for the icing on the cake.
So when you start off at slow speed, the Axe is something like 500 grit sandpaper, something like that.
Yeah,
And then when you speed up to faster speed,
Yeah.
it breaks down and then it goes to something like 1,000 grit.
Yeah, or even finer, so it gets really nice.
Is Axe food safe?
I don't know, the
Well, you're gonna
carnauba
put
waxes, I don't know,
something
I'm not
over,
sure what's in the sanding paste. I
Which,
mean, it's gritty, if
Jim,
you want to
which,
eat grit.
which Southern and Wells did you end up for your top coat? What
So
do you
this
know?
was what's called Murdoch's.
Okay.
So it's the citrus solvent, and it has a little bit of resin in it. I think it's a nice finish,
Yeah.
but
It is.
I'll let you judge for yourselves.
Looks nice.
They're local too, right? They're around.
They're Rhode Islanders, yeah, they're over by, what's the Water Fire
Oh, yeah.
Center?
The art center,
Where the fine furniture show is.
But they also sell that at, what's the name of the hardware store right there?
Adler's.
yeah.
They sell it at Adler's, yeah.
Down in Fox Point.
Yeah, so it's a local concern, these samples are $16, so you can go and try them out. They have several different lines. See if you like it.
So Jim, it's a chance we might not see you for a long time.
I will be back in October,
Okay,
but that'll be it, I think.
Yeah.
all right. Well, hopefully we see you then. And that's it, no more show and tell. All right,
That should do it.
don't take your stuff, I have to take photos of everything for the newsletter. Don't grab your show and tell stuff until I take the picture. So, all right, so let's just, do we need a break? Anybody need a break?
Yeah, we'll take the cup. No. Yeah, let it rip. It's hot out.
All
Yeah,
right.
let it rip.
All right, so I was asked to talk about carbide tools. I turn carbide, I do a lot with carbide, but I turn with both. So I just grabbed an example of every carbide tool that I have. I'll just quickly talk about this. Okay, so I think they make everything out of carbide just because they can. I happen to have a carbide parting tool, which I hate. It's crap, because it doesn't the tips don't last very long. And, it's very hard to sharpen, but I do have a carbide parting tool that I bought for some reason. So that's an example of that. You guys pass it around. You'll notice that it's bent a little bit.
On purpose or?
It just happens.
Okay,
Stuff happens.
so not on purpose.
I have, this actually I like, this is a carbide hollowing tool. It helps for certain things, so I'll use this sometimes. Now, this is something I never use, but I brought it. I don't know what I would even use this for.
Diamond, is that the
So,
diamond? I can't see it from here.
It's like a diamond.
Diamond, yeah, diamond.
Whenever I use it, it's just for making accents. So I have to have some of these. It's gonna fall apart because it's not screwed in. Now,
I see people online using those as scrapers.
yeah,
Have you ever tried that? No.
I use a real scraper.
You have a scraper.
Like I don't use the diamond point for much of anything other than,
Do you use any of the negative rake bit? Have you tried those?
no,
No,
I've seen them.
Yeah.
I have negative rake scrapers.
for that.
So I just use
Yeah.
those. So this is a rounded one. Sometimes I'll use this for hollowing, but then I get to the carbide tool that I use the most. This is a rounded one. I don't see these.
Jeez, that is a.
So this is just a square tip, and I can make an entire bowl, start to finish, with just this. So I will shape the outside, shape the inside. I can make positive and negative curves with this. It's almost like using a tiny screw, maybe. I don't know how to, but I've been using this type of carbide tool for so long that I can make any sort of bowl, pretty much anything, with just this. So,
This would be the next. Inside, but it's.
How would you do an undercut?
But like if you do it like that base.
can do an undercut because you're basically using, how to describe it. So when I'm doing certain fine works, I'm using just this tiny outside piece.
Okay.
So by using just the tiny outside piece in the angle, you can make small cuts and then smooth it out with the center. So it's hard to describe unless I had a task to do it, but I can do it. And I do anything with this. So like I'm working on 4 bowls and I pretty much never took anything else out but this because I just wanted to go quick.
So you're using that on the outside and on the hollowing as well?
Yeah. So for the inside, I'll make steps. So I'll step it down, almost like the outside of a pyramid, and to rough everything out. And then I will, either using the side or the center, or smooth it, and it's quick.
You sharpen your tips or replace them?
I have a diamond plate, which will clean them up, and so I don't have to replace it as often. And there's 4 sides, so usually you're only using 2 sides when you turn it. So you turn it, unscrew it, flip it around and turn it.
Yeah, that sharpening plate was the best investment you ever told me about.
I think it's like $18
$18.
saves for the plate, and it cleans it up, and you're not going through it quickly. Unscrew it, and put it on
Did you try
this little
that?
holder, you
No,
rub it back and forth on the
it sounded
diamond
like
plate.
it could work.
But you can also
I
take
don't
the
know why
diamond
not.
plate and quickly rub it over while it's still on. But it works better if you
You
take it
like
off.
this round shape, rather than a squared up shape?
It's not much of a difference, I found, because I'm almost always using a corner. So I'm not ever using the whole carbide tip for what I'm doing.
I use it just for reference.
Yeah,
You can get a 2-degree
Yeah.
carbide, and a 2-degree gives you that, there's there's a 2-degree and a 4-degree. And a 4-degree, I tried that, and 2-degree works perfect. You can really smooth stuff, it's like a scraper.
Yeah.
You know.
For years, I just used a straight,
Cool.
a square,
Mhm.
no taper at all, no curve at all. Everything with that too. I'm not saying you should, there's some better tools out there, but sometimes I'm lazy and I just roughing something out and do it quick.
It's slightly
And,
rounded.
I might finish something off, like a blow
That's
off
what
with a
he's
scraper,
using this.
just to,
Oh,
fix any tool marks I
That's
left
a little
behind.
different than what I got.
It's your square. So this is gonna be.
I use the diamond.
I have something else that would be okay.
Maybe, from the side, just
Okay.
get that little bit of angle in there.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do with the square. So with the diamond, you can just get that just right. Unless you take the
The only thing that carbide I found is probably better for is if you're dealing with resin.
there's a big turn.
So if you have resin and it's cured resin and hard, carbide works much better than normal gouges. That's the only thing I feel like the carbide is better than the traditional tool. Some things it's just as good, some things are kind of, not as good and you're better learning regular gouges. But,
John, do you use a bull gouge as well?
I do,
Would you say that with the carbides, there's a lot more sanding?
yeah.
Lot more sanding. You're not getting that finished bevel cut.
Especially if
with
you're
that.
dealing with wet wood or softer wood, a nice sharp bowl gouge will save you so much time in the long run.
Right.
But if it's old dry wood that's been sitting around, carbide works pretty well.
Yeah.
So like I do a lot of cherry burls and I'll just use the carbide on that because when I turn burls, I'm turning dry burls because when they're wet, it just doesn't work out well for me. It tends to the grain's so crazy, it splits and tears and stuff, so I prefer to do very dry burls. But that's me, everybody knows, everybody has their own
Right.
techniques, their own ways of doing things. So, there's no one way that's better than the other.
Do you ever try any Hunter tools?
What is that?
So Hunter, so they make carbide tools, but their cutters are different. They're kind of cup shaped.
Okay.
So there's a little bevel on the cutter,
Mhm.
and carbide, you can rotate the cup around. So it's kind of a transitional kind of tool.
I don't
Is
need
that
to buy
the
any more
tip?
tools.
Oh, yes, you do.
I don't.
Is that the tip or the whole tool? Is it
So it has a replaceable tip,
replaceable tip?
and the tip is cup shaped, so it shears. It doesn't scrape, it shears.
Okay.
They make several, there's an Osprey is one line, that they have several different lines. Hunter.
Have you used them?
I have one, I've used it a little bit, not very much.
Okay.
And I didn't bring it tonight, sorry.
Cool.
Who's next? Small hauling tools.
Oh, this was a sign up.
You have a tool that you want to talk about?
I've got one of the tools. So I got two of them.
Do you like it?
Very good. I like doing hollow forms. I've done a number of them this size. My kids have most of them.
Of course.
And this is the first hollow form I ever did, back in 2008. I was pleased that I didn't blow it up. And this one has a collar, only because when I was turning it, I was using a square shaft and it caught the edge and ripped it. So I didn't want to leave it just this ugly hole, so I made a little collar out of walnut. I was turning this one quite some time ago. I don't even remember, it was so long ago. And unfortunately, I went through the bottom, creating a funnel, so I cut it in half. So it's a great way to demonstrate how to use the various tools. Like most of my small hollows, I used, they don't even sell them anymore. These were from Penn State. And unfortunately, I didn't buy a bunch of the replaceable tips. I don't know where the hell I'm gonna get replaceable tips. But what I do when I do hollow forms is I take a Forstner bit, or depending upon the size of it, of the piece I'm working on, I made one of these, and I use a rubber washer as a stop. So it tells me exactly how much I need to go in. When I get to that, you just stop. But I found this very useful when you're turning, especially small hollow forms, because you definitely don't want to do this and go through the bottom. So you can set that and give yourself a little extra room. Easy to make, nice little wood turning project. But I start out with a straight tool. And you go in and you just start clearing this way as you're going through. And then when you can't get, see, with a straight tool, you can only go about halfway down. Then you've run out of space. And the smaller the hole, the less angle you can do. So like that first one I passed around, you know, it's got a 1/2 inch hole. I would be able to go like about that. That's all. So then at that point, you have to switch to, I got a couple different goosenecks here. This one is for under the opening, right under the opening. And this is for midway down and up. I'll pass these around.
Now, those are all replaceable tips, or no,
They
they're
are,
chopping?
but I don't know where the hell I'm gonna find
Ah.
replacement tips. You know, Penn used to sell them, but every time I checked, they're no longer there.
Huh,
So, I
okay.
don't know, maybe Azad Carbide or something might have them. And, you know, I had started out using some of Robert Sorby's small modular tools. And I found that unless you're turning little Christmas ornaments, hollow forms, they're really not very practical. They sit in my drawer much more than I use them. But they come with a round nose scraper and a slight bent scraper. And then as you get into the bigger stuff, And this is a replaceable tip on here, and it's just a high-speed steel tip. Goes in, and this one happens to have a set screw. It's not glued in, so you don't have to get out the porch and heat it and take the tip out. But again, it's for about halfway down, a small turning and up. Now, I bought the tools to do the bigger hollow forms. I haven't yet invested the time to do them. I've got the Trent Bosch system with the visualizer and all that. This one's great for using on hollow forms because you can take this tip and loosen the screw and move it. So that will give you this slightly bent to the really strong bent to clean out. Again, the shaft size limits you as to how small hole that you can put in your hollow form. And when you get it pretty well turned on the inside, then you go in with your teardrop scraper and just clean it up.
Paul, going back for a second, do you sharpen this or is this,
That's carbide tip,
that's carbide? Okay.
replaceable carbide tip.
Replaceable, okay,
And this is high-speed steel, sharpenable.
right.
So, and you can take this because of the set screw and you can change the angle of your scraper and give you a little bit more versatility. But when you've got a half-inch shaft, you've got to have an opening of at least 3/4 of an inch to be able to get any maneuvering. And 1-inch opening is even more even preferable so you can get in there and do something. But, you know, you look at people like David Ellsworth, who would do a 12-inch hollow form with a 1/4-inch opening. You know, he would spend hours and hours and hours because you put some shavings in there, you're gonna stop every few minutes and get those shavings out because now your hole's gonna get clogged and you don't. So, but, yeah. So that's basically how I do hollow forms. I drill down either with that on small stuff or with a Forstner bit for the larger ones. And then there's anybody that puts out any diagrams on how you hollow, all use the same diagram as to how you hollow. As you go in, as you go down, you start coming back up. And you're sweeping this way. And then when you can no longer get past it because of the angle, then you switch to the first bend. And then when you can no longer get there, then you have to switch to the next stronger bend. And then you can get right up underneath here.
So you're pulling the material,
Yeah,
not
you're pulling it
not
out.
pushing.
Yep.
No wonder
Pulling it
mine always come out backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see when I did this one, this is much too thick walls, but you can see how I was doing it. And when I got down here, I started to get too aggressive. I guess I was getting a little bit impatient. And instead of sticking with this and getting it hollowed out more before I started going across. And that's how I ended up creating a little funnel. I'm also somebody who likes spalted wood very much to turn for the hollow forms because you get such striking patterns out of it. So it gives you and it's an easy wood to turn mostly. I picked up a piece of spalted here a couple months ago, last time I was here, and I tried turning it, and it is too punky, and I'm getting tear out no matter what I do. I'm getting tear out. I even brought it over to Roland put a coat of epoxy on it for me, and still getting tear out, no matter negative rake, the sharpest I could ever get.
Was that horse chestnut?
It was all spalted, really pretty,
Yeah, I think that might have been the horse chestnut.
but it's just a nightmare to try
Right.
to. Yeah, if you don't mind all kinds of pock marks all over it, yeah, you can turn it.
Yeah.
But I prefer not to have
Yeah.
huge copper.
So you
outside.
put, so Roland put the epoxy on?
Yeah.
And then you went back to turning and it's got the same result?
Because it's, and when I was sanding it, I said, well, let me see what I can do with sanding it. And I'm using an 80 grit, and I'm using a random orbit. And as some places are so soft, even when it's spinning, and you start feeling later, it goes whoop, 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 and you're getting dips in it. And that's while it's turning on the lathe. So I just, I've given up on it, just too much time
Right,
and ending up with a
nothing.
unsatisfactory turning. So that, in 10 minutes or so, how I do hollow turnings.
How do you gauge the thickness of the wall?
Oh, I should have brought them. I've got a couple different gauges. One is just a piece of wire that I bent, started with a straight knot, and then bent the circle. Those are the tips. Yeah, and the tips that are replaceable for scraping come in different shapes. You got round, you got small, kind of whatever shape that is, and then. So you can get them in pretty much any shape you want, and if you're really handy, you can grind it to your custom shape. But, so, that's what I have to say about that.
Perfect.
Any questions? But it's fun to do. I've enjoyed doing it. It can be very frustrating sometimes because the wood doesn't always want to cooperate, or you get a little too aggressive, and it usually doesn't end up well. So, but yeah, it's fun to do.
Yeah.
If you like doing hollow forms.
Right. But they really don't have a purpose, right? Other than they look pretty on the
That's it.
shelf?
They're just for saying, yeah, that looks nice.
Okay.
That's all they're for. It's looking at.
Use compressed air to blow
Yes.
out,
Compressed air going right at the lathe.
right there.
Yeah.
That's handy. That tool that's in the D-Way handle, is that a D-Way tool?
I don't remember who I bought that from. I know I have all of them, not all of them, I have 4 different heating tools from them.
Yeah.
And I bought the handle to go with it. But,
You don't really need the handle.
Sorry?
You don't really need the handle for the beating tools.
No, you don't. That was a foolish knowledge, but you don't know it until you try it.
Exactly.
Then you realize, oh, this is $40 I didn't need to spend.
And now for something very similar but completely different.
Very different.
Well, so that was the small hollowing tools, and I brought in my big hollowing tools. So this is probably very similar, if not the same system he was talking about, the tread box one. I got this earlier this year. This is the 1-inch, bar. So this can go theoretically up to 18 inches deep. I've only done like 15 or 16. But this is super, super heavy duty. The mount part of it weighs about 40 pounds, 35, 40 pounds. And then the whole thing together is pretty heavyweight. So the amount of movement or vibration you get from this, as long as your wood is balanced, is really, really minimal. The nice part is it's not bad on your back, because I've done a lot of hollowing where you're standing over the ways like this and you're kind of going in. I've done the Ellsworth method where you just straddle it and sit on it for hours at a time. Flat piece of metal is not very comfortable. So this is nice because it pull the headstock lathe, and you can pretty much just sit there and just almost hollow your stuff out. Other of the heads for this, but I figured one is the point. It's the other ones they're just goosenecks. And then one of them is the teardrop scraper as well. But yeah, I don't think I can really pass this around. So if anyone wants to check it out, you're more than welcome to.
Does that size come with the what do they call it, the gooseneck shape as well?
Yeah, so it has the medium curve and then the extreme curve.
Yeah.
I don't have the extreme curve because I usually do the hollowing stuff I do is usually like open vessels, like flower pots and that sort of thing, or like big vases. So I don't have much of a use personally for the like really like steep undercut. I might get one eventually, but right now it's largely just I had a bunch of big logs and I wanted to make big stuff, so I got a big thing to make big stuff out of. And I figured every time I purchased something, like my first lathe, I was like, this is great, I want to go bigger. And then I got a bigger one. And then, it's the kind of theme. So when I went to go buy a hollowing system, I was like, I should just get this one. And then you can't go any bigger. And so
your lathe is the next size up from this one, right?
it's the 1836.
Yeah. So with a system like this, you wouldn't buy that and put it on this lathe, right? I mean,
I think this thing is
One-
as long as the ways. Yeah.
I mean, it's,
I don't see why you
but the
couldn't.
horsepower on this is like one, I think it's one, or it might be rated at 1.5. With this setup, do you need the horsepower? Like, I mean, if you had is yours 2 horsepower, the next one up?
It's 2 horsepower, but it also has the VFD on it, so it's like technically 3.
Right.
Take it as you will. But when I used this one last time I did a demo, you could definitely feel the difference in power. I think depending on exactly what you were hollowing, and if it wasn't, like, I don't know if this thing would reliably turn a log for something to make like a 16, 18 inch piece. So it might just be the motor. I don't think the size of the ways really makes a difference, because if you pull this thing down all the way and have it there, I mean, it's probably just the size and the weight of the wood against it. But yeah, it's a really nice piece of equipment. It's definitely, it's not cheap, but it's very well worth the money. It's very well made. Mine has been sitting in the shop for a little while and definitely needs a little bit of cleanup because I've been very busy lately. But if anyone wants to check it out, you're more than welcome to.
What's the brand again?
Trent Bosch. Yeah. I also just ordered a carbide conversion kit for it too. So you just, like somebody mentioned, you just heat up the end of it, he's pop right out. He sells carbide inserts for this as well. And I've pretty much been only doing end grain stuff with this to make those sorts of things. Carbide I find is a lot easier for end grain than, also these things are absolute pain in the ass to sharpen. These little tips on getting a good edge on them.
Does Trent make the conversion for that?
Yeah, a lot of routes look like. Yeah. I'm not sure what else to say if anyone has any questions. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's a beast.
It is.
It's a,
It's the kind of thing that like I'm not very good at looking at sizes of things when I purchase them, and then I get them and I'm like, oh, that's either way too small. Like,
not this time.
well, the funniest one is I've got 3 dogs and I ordered a pickup rake and everything for it. I was like, wow, that was really cheap, and it shows up and it was actually like a sandbox shovel for little kids. But then I ordered this and I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that looks pretty sizable. I think that'll do the trick. But then when it actually showed up, come on now. A little stubborn sometimes. But then when I got this thing and I picked up the box and then I put it together, I was like, this is a lot.
Yes, that's a tool.
I know.
That's a tool.
Oh yeah. But, and then the best way to, before you go hollowing, if you ever feel like you need a good warm up, you just take this thing and you do like you do a few curls with it. Cool. That's that.
Interesting.
Ross, you have something to show us, right?
Clean it up.
Lights don't work. Nothing works like it used to.
They never do. Okay. So I brought in power carving stuff. So I brought in a variety of things. So this is here. So we'll start with this one. This is a Fordham tool. Of course, there's another one around it. I don't know if you've ever heard of Fordham. This is a very high powerful torque type of carving tool. It takes a 1/4 inch bit. It can go down as small like 3/16, but this is a 1/4 inch bit. This is carbide. This is very aggressive type of thing. It's a slow speed, but very aggressive. This sort of piece is what I would use this for. I don't use this that much anymore. In fact, I don't use it at all because I moved to smaller things.
How, is it sit on a stand or something? I mean,
Yeah,
or
this
you
hangs
just,
on a stand.
oh, it hangs.
Yeah, hangs on a stand. It has, you can get a floor thing for it. I don't use a floor thing. I use a rheostat so I can control the speed with it. As I say, it's very high power, very high torque. It's really to move a lot of wood. Can
Move a lot of wood.
with
Yeah.
this. Fordham's in Connecticut. They made in Connecticut, Berlin, Connecticut. So just put that down. So most of the stuff I do is more surface carving like this. This is something I've been working on. It's a grape leaf with some little grapes on it. And for that, we use a micro motor. And this, I brought 2 micro motors. This is Master Carver. This one, oh, okay, so this Fordham tool runs about $500.
Ooh.
The bits for this thing run about 30. So these are carbide, they don't wear out at all. But this is another micro motor. It's a little different. It's an Oz. So this one goes up to about 50,000 RPMs. It goes pretty fast. Again, it has a carbide. This takes 1/8 to 3/16 inch bits. And they're little colics you can put in there. It just comes right out. Very easy to use. Same with this one. This one costs about $250. This has a readout for how fast you're going. This does not. And the hand tool for it's very similar. It's a little smaller than this one. And it's same thing, just twist it and a bit can take out. They're very easy to use. They're almost like writing, That's kind of nice. Same with this one. Generally sit there with the light shining down on the piece I'm working on and when I do it. And most of the pieces, like the one with the leaves, what I do is I draw it out on paper so I know what I'm going to do. It's not free. I'm not doing it freehand. And then I make a template and I, out of like a cardstock, and I cut it out and then put it on the piece and then trace it so that I know where I'm going. And in that particular piece, what I did was I used the wood carving tool, a skew, and just went around the edge of what I was going to carve out. And then I took my carving tools and just went around the edge. And the higher speed, the more control you have. The slower speed, it's really tough. It can move all around. So these are examples, again, China. So these were bought in China. I just brought these. These are high-speed steel. They're not great. This is diamond. Those are diamonds, industrial diamonds. So you can see some of the other tools, other things. There's sanders you can put in there. So these are sanders. This is a carbide sander. And this is another sander. So actually, you can even use this on a piece you want to sand, something you've turned and you want to sand it, you can use these as well. And this is another very aggressive carbide bit. So, pass them along.
You use the Kutzall, the Kutzall, you use the
The what?
Kutzall ones?
Yeah, these, I forget the brand name. Some of, these are from Canada, I forget the name.
Sabretooth?
Sabertooth,
Yeah.
yeah. And the other one, I have some of those.
Yeah.
In fact, the one that's on there might be from there. So they're very, very good tools. They are, carbide's very expensive. Like that little packet I showed you probably costs $5. But these, carbide ones probably run somewhere in the vicinity of, I don't know, $15, $20 a piece. So they're not cheap. And that's it. Any questions?
So are these, you know, is it the torque or the speed that you're going for with, because you got
Speed.
very expensive and maybe not so expensive?
Yeah, very speed. This one works very well. There's, it's a very nice little tool. A lot of wood turners who do embellishing use this one. This one's a little bit more fancier. It can do more, it has more features than this, besides just the digital readout.
But if you were just starting out to try this, you would just go for the most speed that you can get your hands on?
This one would work, just for someone just starting out, this one
Yeah.
works beautifully.
The little handheld Dremels, obviously it's not in the same boat, but is it, they just don't go fast enough? Is that,
They,
you know, like a $99 handheld Dremel
yeah,
type?
They don't quite make the speed.
They don't go
And
fast.
they'll dance around the wood a little bit, where when you get.
So it's not that you're not doing it right, it's just, it's not the right tool for the
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, when you start doing this, the higher the speed, the less chance it's gonna bounce around on the wood. And most of the surface carving is very light. As I get thicker, the pieces generally are thicker, because sometimes I go a little deeper, for the embellishing. So, most of the pieces have to be probably in the 1/4 inch range and not too thin. That's it.
When you're working on a piece, how do you hold it?
So it's a good question. So a small piece like this one here, I'm just gonna hold that in my hand and do it, okay? But I do have a thing that I can put my chuck in, so I can hold the piece right in the chuck, and then I can carve and do things with
Do you have a
it.
carving stand, a carving post?
Yeah, it's a carving post that holds the chuck. Exactly. I don't use it a lot because a lot of this stuff is really just very fine. Where that other piece over there, that one I would definitely be using in a stand because of really being aggressive. And it would be hard to hold and do that. But this fine stuff is very easy. So,
Would you rather do turn or do that? Would you rather turn or do intricate work?
well, see, that's the problem. Good question. That is a very big, good problem. So I have a bunch of these sitting around because I'd rather turn. So they're sitting there waiting for me to do something with them. So that's the problem, because this does take time. It takes a fair amount of time and planning and laying it out. And I'd rather turn.
And then comes the next problem is how to fix that, right? Once you've done that,
Exactly. So most of the pieces that I do, I finish with an alcohol dye, and sometimes I'll use an acrylic. But most of the time, the coloring is with an alcohol dye because it's more. I think it looks a little nicer than the acrylic. It goes into the wood just much nicer. So that's it.
that's a whole nother game to turning.
It's a whole nother, exactly. So lately, I've been turning more than I've been doing this, which is a problem.
To answer your question, Rick, I started some
So,
carving.
I
and
went to that.
Took my Dremel and got a saw
Right.
off that, just to see if I could do it. So I didn't spend the money until I was comfortable.
Right. inside.
Next time I wish list.
Yeah, so that doesn't really work well. I mean, it works,
Yeah,
not well.
it's right down here.
So it works, but not well.
It's a challenge.
But sometimes, you know, when you're trying a new project and you do that, and you think, boy, I really suck at this. You don't realize that maybe not, you're just not using the right tools. Right? You need,
I didn't have any trouble carving with it, but I had to buy extensions because the drum was just too hard to do. I don't like extensions.
because I brought the little one, I couldn't even get it to draw my name.
I should mention something.
Yeah.
This
Thanks for the
company
laser.
called Oz, they also make piercing unit. And the piercing unit runs
Oh,
wicked
okay.
fast, like, I don't know, over
Thanks for coming in,
100,000
Tom.
RPMs, but you're using dental drills. Dental
You'll
drill.
meet it next month, right?
drill
No
bits.
meeting next month, nope.
And it runs on compressed air. It's a lot different.
Did you,
See
John,
piercing, and they use a unit like this,
John, did you get a picture of his thing?
which I don't do.
He's gotta leave. Did you get a picture of his cookie jar?
I did.
Okay, all right, perfect. Thanks, John.
Take care. Roland, you wanna show us your?
Thanks, Rob.
Is this in case we're out of control?
Is our lathe not big enough?
Just a little too small.
I was wondering if this would fit the weights, but it doesn't, so I have to be careful now.
Do you want me to hold it?
Oh, no, I can do it, I just have to be careful because it's heavy on one side, so I don't want to flip. So I'm gonna put this back in because we're not going to use it. The handle. And then this is a coring tool, which is different than a hollowing tool. Because a hollowing tool, you're just getting rid of wood. A coring tool, you're saving wood. This is the small knife. It's not, they got one knife smaller than this. I just bought this, so this is new to me. But I like this. There's another one right there. That's the wood cut. And that one's nice, except what's nice about this is when you're coring, this knife will go in, and then now you're gonna run this knife into that hole. So there's always support underneath this cutter, as you go through, versus.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you're gonna set the other guy. Which makes it really nice, and then they also have a carbide cut that goes on here that,
It's called a Core Pro.
Core Pro, and the Hunter makes that too.
Hunter makes it.
Right, and which is not a cheap cutter either. But again, it cuts, it doesn't, it's not a scraper, it's got a nice little cup on it, it cuts like butter. And then this one here, the thing about this is as you're going into your bowl here, there's no support on this knife, you know, so you wind up with a lot of torque, and because it's a scraper, it just catches a lot. It's nice, because this was my first one, and I used this for a long time, and it worked great. And I got another one, and it has 3 knives, so it cuts bigger cores. And then, you know, because I was talking to somebody, and he said, oh, no, it cuts like butter. So I went, and everybody says it's so nice, so I said, okay, let me get this one, and just to see how good it cuts. And it cuts. I don't regret this, so I can make cores all day long with this, where that becomes it works great, but you're not gonna have as much fun as this one here. And again, this is almost a small, they got a smaller knife and two bigger knives. And then once you get down to this size, you don't need this to follow in. If you're trying to make something smaller than this is supposed to cut, then what I end up doing is I'll just put this against the bowl, the face of the bowl, and I'll just use this as a support, and I'll just let it run through like so. And basically, it's gonna cut just like this one here. But because the cutter cuts so much better, it's not scraping, you don't get that same amount of torque. So, I can cut smaller stuff than this is supposed to be. I don't need a smaller knife to do that. I'll probably get the smaller knife just because I want it. But this is a really nice cord. And it doesn't take much to. The other thing is to figure out the depth. So I measure from here to the center of this. And then, so from the center, whatever this is, this might be 4 inches, 5 inches. And then I figure out my bowl is like so much, and then I figure out how far in I have to go. If you use the numbers right, you wind up with an inch at the bottom. I like to have an inch at the bottom of the bowl that I'm working on. So that gives me room to play. Well, actually, it gives me room to screw up. So if I'm going for an inch and I wind up with a half, I still got enough wood there. But if you don't use the right numbers, you're looking for an inch and you wind up with 0 inches. That means that big bowl that you just poured is junk.
Firewood.
Because there's no bottom. It's like there's a bottom, but it's like about paper thin and doesn't give you any room to do anything. So I only did that once. And that was probably at one of those moments when I shouldn't have been trying. Because once you start guessing, is it 2.5 or 3.5? So I did it at 2.5. I said, no, I really think it's 3.5. But it says measure twice, cut once. Well, that doesn't always work because you can measure 3 or 4 times and still wish you didn't cut. Because the number is the wrong number. If you're using the wrong number, it doesn't matter what you do. It's not going to come out. So that's why I like to have at least an inch in the bottom of it. But, so that's this guy here. And
How do you determine the inch?
so this is how deep this is going to come. And if that's like 5 inches, and so what I actually use my level. So I go up against the tenon on the bottom of my bowl, and then I'll measure from the bottom of my outside part of my bottom of my bowl. I'll measure to the front, and if that becomes 6 inches, and then this is 4 inches, then I know that is 2 inches extra. And
So what do you move on that?
Oh, that's when I move this in or out.
Okay.
So this is where
Because I
you
have
move it.
one.
You have this one?
I don't know if I have that one. It looks just like that.
Okay, then you probably have this one. Yeah, that's,
It's not that big.
so that's how you end up doing it. So you move this in and out, and then you can move it like so. But I measure from this center to whatever I'm figuring for that inch on the bottom. And I do the same thing with this one here. Because this, you measure from here to here. And whatever this is basically the same thing, you just measure, just to get an idea. And then this one, I actually ended up with a couple, I think somebody even made some. I think Mike.
Oh, yeah, no, I have those. I didn't bring them in.
Oh,
It
okay.
just,
Yeah,
it's
they're
like a
actually-
guide.
They're actually legs that will actually fit over your bowl, so you actually know where you cut it. They also make a laser, so you can use a laser on it, so you know where you're going.
Yeah.
So there are ways you can get around depending on your brain.
So Roland, is that,
So-
is that adjustable at all, or you buy it by the size of your
You
lathe?
buy it by the size of the lathe,
Okay,
but it's adjustable.
because that looks awfully large, but I'm sure it's,
But, so I can adjust this to bring this on center. This one here, because I dropped a piece of solid steel in here, and so they would normally be the same distance. But because that's in there, now I just say, who cares?
Okay.
And then this one here, so you wind up, this one, you measure it and you keep moving this set screw, till you wind up with your cutter right on center.
Right on center.
Yeah, and that way, so when you're going in, if you're going up off center, then you wind up and you're gonna start riding over, that basically be a tenon in there, so you start riding over that, and if you're going under, then you ride under. If you're going close to center, then you get really close, and then once it starts to get really close to being through, you'll hear it, and then you'll see a little bit of wobble, and then I just give it a whack on the top side and pop it off the grain pops.
How is that sharpened? Is that,
This is carbide.
oh, okay.
The one that, they also sell, the one that comes with this is high-speed steel. And there's a little gizmo that you can put against the grinder, wheel and grinder and shit. And then they also make another carbide that fits on here. But that Hunter buys, I bought the one that Hunter makes for this. And so there's a saddle that fits over here, and then there's a nice little carbide cutter and it cuts. It's not a scraper like this one. It's almost like one of the carbides that you saw. It's cut, so it cuts. It does not scrape. And that's why, and then you gotta clear it all the time because it's cutting so much, and it's cutting heavy stuff, so you gotta keep clearing it and clear out. And what I mean by clearing is this chip, almost like when you're doing the hollow forms. If you're not clearing it out, you got a whole bunch of chip in there, and then that chip is gonna grab your cutter and do a trick with you. And the same thing here. If you're not clearing out, pretty soon it's gonna jam, and once it jams, now you got a bunch of chips in there because I turn green wood. And what happens with green wood, it wants to expand. So that wet wood just expands. So it's filling that up. It's really hard to get it out if you don't do it the right way. So this is the one-way setup that I like. And you can buy this for any size lathe. You can buy a small one, depending on what size lathe you got. Mine is a 25-inch swing, so this is the same as the 24. They don't make one for a 25, but the 24 fits the 25. So that's how this whole thing works.
What's the ballpark on that price-wise? Any idea?
No, I don't have any idea.
Okay.
I know the carbide cutter was like $210 just for that carbide.
Just for the cutter.
And it's just a cutter, it's not anything.
Okay.
But I ended up buying, the whole thing. I bought this and then I bought one I just wanted to see, and then I ended up, well, as long as I like this, I'll get the other couple more arms, and then there's still one more smaller arm, and then when I end up, some company, that free shipping, so if you spend $1,000, so you spend $1,010 that you really didn't need that last $200 thing, but it's free shipping, so you gotta have it. So no, I really don't know. Paul might have an idea how much this setup costs with the 3 nights.
If you were to buy the 4-night setup, it's pushing $1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it cheaper when you get like a smaller lathe? It must be a little
No,
bit.
not really,
No?
because all they do is reduce the size of the columns.
So Jane, you brought one for your lathe's only 12-inch, right?
Yeah, they make them for a 12-inch.
Wow. Doesn't seem like it would be strong enough to.
And I bought it before I bought the new lathe, so I don't know if it fits on there. I have to get that piece that fits underneath.
Oh, that clamps in the ways.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what happened. So that piece would go in, I'd wind up figuring out where I want it, then I just tighten that down, so this doesn't move. So I can move this like so, if I want this to get underneath here, so. It's just like so. And then as I move it in, so this never moves anymore. Once I'm starting to do, it's not gonna move, but this is gonna move. So I can move this to get deeper into that hole, and I keep getting deeper in it. And I don't know why people say there's no learning curve. Some people say it's a pain in the ass and they don't like using it. And I have no idea why, because it's not that complicated. It's just this arm. You just want to let that arm go in a little bit more, and the cut is going to dictate where this arm is going to go, because it's going to follow. It can't go the other way because there's wood there, so it's just going to follow that same track. And as long as you probably I'll leave that much over as I'm going through it. And it just gives it so much more support. Again, like this one here, this one is gonna be bouncing around a lot. And it's actually a thinner knife, and this is a thicker knife, so.
So this is riding that piece, that's where you're not getting the vibration.
Right, as that overhang. And so you just keep pushing that in, so that's always gonna have that extra support. You know, so you don't have that. And a lot of times once this starts getting out, you know, you don't have any, you don't have any support here. And then this knife is a little bit smaller, but it's also, but it works. I caught a lot with this one, and then I bought the bigger one, like so, and I did a lot of coring with that one. And then I found out that it's one like this, if I put I jam a block of wood underneath here, so that's where it's giving it some support. And it's not vibrating as much. So and that somebody else taught me that he uses the same with the wood cut with the 3 knives. And said, no, if you put a block of wood underneath it, it just helps with that bounce. And it did. And so I was doing that. And again, I'd still be using that until, I don't know, I was really sick, so I deserve something. So that's what I know about this thing here.
Cool.
And they make another type too. So there's another one multi, I think is that the name?
McNaughton.
McNaughton. And that one is that stuff, the biggest learning curve, because it's all freehand basically. Whereas this is, it's easy. But when you're doing that freehand, you know, you got to do a lot of measuring. Everything's got to be right, and then you got to remember what you're doing. Whereas once you get it set up, you don't even have to remember. You just have to remember to pull it out once in a while, clear it out. But this and this are the easiest ones. There's no learning here really. But that one there is a bit of a learning curve. But it cuts nice. You can get nice forms with it. I actually have that one at home too. And except I had one of those. I had one of the big arms, and I actually snapped it right at the end. And they're not supposed to snap, but if you're not using it right, they will snap.
So do you turn your outside wood first before you hollow it out, or you hollow it first? I'm not hollow it.
Core.
No, core.
Oh no, I shape my bowl. I decide what
The first
shape
bowl.
my bowl is, if it's going to be funnel shape, because I have to know where this is going to go. So I have a shape here. I also know that, okay, I want a wide flange on the top of my bowl. I'm going to have a wide flange with a nice deep undercut, so I need to account before I try to core. And the whole thing about coring is, you core it, now instead of having this much chips everywhere, you got a core, and then you just throw the core down, and then you either keep doing that, and then someday you're gonna have a pile of cores over there that are dry, and now you can just make new bowls because the cores are already dry. And I put them in a plastic bag. Right, I got a pile of cores. I don't like doing little bowls. I like doing big bowls, and I think what's happening now is I'm going back in that direction. I'm not going back. I can't pick up that big shit anymore. Those little bowls are so much fun. It was like that little hollow form. It's just like there's no, but when you put it in, you drop a 25-inch hunk of wood that's probably this deep. That's heavy because it's green, and so I still got to get it up there. I still got to get it that tenon because I put it on a tenon. I still got to get the stupid thing in the chuck, and you still got to make it round. And it's a lot of work to doing really big stuff. But if you're patient, and then if you keep doing exercises, you care for yourself, you're rewarded because you got those really big free bowls. And then you can have a nest of them, so you wind up with maybe 4 or 5, depending on how big you start with, depending on how much of a flange you want on the top of it. That lip. I've done the ones I've just done a lot of maple I did, but I wanted that nice undercut, so I got a wide flange. The lip is nice, and then I did that nice undercut, so it just looks nice. And it's relatively thin because it's maple, it's green, it was going to want to shrink. And some pieces work nice. I got a couple others that are in bigger bags that I haven't checked yet, but I'm pretty sure it'll be fine because everything else I did prior to that dating prep, so they should be fine. It might be just that piece of, type of, maple that doesn't want, still will shrink, but doesn't want to crack as much. Some stuff wants to crack if you just look at it. Stuff is, oh shit, I don't believe this thing cracked. So that's my story.
You're sticking to it, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
And it's heavy, just so you know. This is a heavy one too. These are light, but this stupid base is pretty heavy. And it has to be heavy to absorb all that torque and tension that's bouncing around. If it weren't, then it would bounce around. You wouldn't get as good a job.
Thanks, Roland. Jim, did you have something that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I just brought a couple of things.
Okay. We got time,
A few doodads.
and I'll finish you off.
So one thing I brought is my tool roller. I really like this one. It has a couple of features that not all tool rollers have, that I haven't seen in others. So it has a couple of flaps that fold down over the tools, so when you roll it up, it keeps them in and keeps them all protected. And then it has these quick release buckles like you see on backpacks. So you can loosen them up to easily close the buckle and then pull on it, tighten it all up. So Paul, I saw you were kind of struggling to get yours
I'm trying to
tightened
put the slot in the wrong spot.
up. Yeah, so there's no slot. There's just a nice buckle. It's Lee Valley, not too expensive. And in here, look what this is, Ross. This is what you have, right?
Similar, yeah.
So this is a carving post. Brought a couple things for holding tools. So so this will go in a couple of places. It'll go in yeah. How do we do this? Yeah, how do we get it past the handle? No. Oh, I guess I was turning it the wrong. Okay. Yeah. So it goes in your banjo. It articulates so you can bend your piece over to work on the side or raise it up to work on the bottom. Thread it. Put your chuck on that. It also comes with a stand that probably is really designed to mount in a workbench, so you can go away from the lathe. I have a circle cutting jig for my bandsaw that has a piece of T-track, and normally there's a piece of plastic that runs in the T-track that has the center point, so it can move in and out, and I can cut different sizes of circles. So this will run in the T-track as well. I think you've probably seen these wave bowls, right? The bowls that have a kind of wave cut out in them. And the way that those are done, you got your piece in the chuck. You have this mounted on the circle cutter, the bandsaw, and you just rotate this. This is another one of these. I'm not doing well with these tonight, am I? All right. I'm having trouble loosening and tightening these up. You just rotate this around through the bandsaw blade, and it cuts that arc out. So you have a bowl, you have the chuck on the bottom, you cut the top off the bowl, cuts it in an arc. You put some kind of contrasting veneer in,
glue it back together. You can do that as many times as you like. And you got a John Beaver type of wave bowl. So holding, brought a couple other things that I use for holding jobs. So I'm cheap. So this is a frugal chuck, a vacuum chuck. And I brought it because I was just using it today. You know, I had finished this bowl. There wasn't anything to hold it with. You know, I couldn't chuck it anymore. So this just screws into the headstock. The tube runs through, plugs in. Should run through, doesn't seem to want to run through this one. Runs through and connect this if you have a vacuum pump. Connect this, and if you haven't used a vacuum chuck, it's a great way to hold work. You can hold it. You can hold the bottom. You can hold the inside. It's really versatile. It'll hold things that otherwise you'd be scratching your head trying to figure out how to do it. So Paul, you mentioned this beading tool. It's a D-Way tool. When I first started turning, I got a Sorby beading tool.
Yeah.
And every time I tried to cut a bead with it, it would catch. And everyone I've ever talked to has it, you know, they just have a devil of a time. They don't really work very well. I can turn beads on spindles, okay, with the gouge or even with a skew on occasion, but I can't turn a bead on a bowl to save my life. And these are great. They're really easy. They come in 4 different sizes. You don't need to buy the handle.
No, you don't.
Because there's not very much torque on them. You just sharpen the very end here, and you have a tool that's ready to go. It cuts a perfect bead every time. I've never had a catch on this. I don't know why it is that what's the difference between the Sorby geometry and this one, but these really do work.
But you're using that with no handle, so just holding what that is,
Yep.
that's it?
Yep,
You can hold it just like that.
yep, just like this on the tool rest. Because you're not cutting very much
Right,
at
no.
a time, right? And you work around a little bit, get a nice round bead. And you can see what happened to my bowl? So I
You sold it.
I put a couple beads around the rim on that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So those beads are from this tool.
Okay. Got it.
So I oftentimes like to use a wood block to mount the pieces that I turn. Instead of a faceplate, I'll take a piece of poplar and true off the end and glue my piece of work onto that and use that. And Bial makes this tab that comes in the same thread as the headstock of your lathe. So Rick, you probably never ever used it.
No, I gave it to somebody, I don't know who.
Oh,
I've
you
never,
gave it away. All right.
never used it.
Okay, well, so what I like to take a piece of poplar, turn it round, then I thread the piece of poplar and just screw that onto my headstock. I can make it any size, and when I'm done with it, when I'm done with the piece that I'm working on, I just turn away the wood. Don't have to worry about hitting screws because everything's just glued together. So this I found to be a really, really useful tool. And I think that's all I have in my bag of tricks tonight.
Quite a nice bag of tricks. All right, so it's gonna be an early night because it is hot out. I'll make this quick. Somebody asked me about this, and I think it was Mike, and he's not here, but this is the bottom feeder, bull gouge, and almost shaped like just a regular traditional. Yeah, it's your bottom feeder. But so, if you're doing the larger bowls, I'm a larger turner as well. And getting deep past 4 or 5 inches with a bowl gouge, even a good bowl gouge, for me, I struggle getting that angle. So this bottom feeder basically is doing, they call it a bottom feeder because it's basically doing just the bottom of the bowl. So you're not coming in and doing the whole bowl. It's coming from the base of the curve to the end. And traditionally, most of them that I'm aware of, like this is the 20-inch handle. So with the 20-inch handle, I can get, I'll get 7 or 8 inches in or more over the tool rest. And you just don't get that vibration from the angle that's on there, on the bottom feeder. And one thing I'd like to mention is, and I bring this up every time we do a tool talk, because I found it to be the best tool that I have in my shop, are these. And I don't think even Jim doesn't have these. I don't know if. does anybody else
Roland
have
probably
these?
does.
Roland doesn't use these, he doesn't need them. So when I first learned how to turn, the biggest thing about bowl gouges is sharpening. And Paul's seen my work. I've literally whittled down 6-7 inches of steel trying to learn how to sharpen. And then someday I finally came up with this. So Thompson Tools has a video that says, set your distance at 1 3/4 from your jig, and then set your distance, and nothing else, don't ever move. So the only thing that changes is the distance. So once I figured out how to do this, I have a piece of metal that goes on the arm of my grinder. I've already measured this out to 1 3/4. I put my blue one on the arm, snug it up in place, and it always gives me this grind. Then when I want to put my bowl gouge in, I still go 1 3/4. I put this piece on that arm, slap it in place, and it always gives me my bowl gouge. And then when I'm in the mood for my spindle gouge, it's the same thing. Once you find your sweet spot, if you're using a traditional grinding system, this is the only variable that'll change, is the distance that you move that arm, according to Doug Thompson. And I think he knows what he's talking about. He's probably pretty good at this. So ever since I switched over to doing this, I always get the same grind all the time. If you're using a CBM wheel, which I am, that distance will never change. Now, this won't work if you're using the white wheels, because those wheels wear down, and now the wheel's smaller, so that theory doesn't work as well. But if you're using CBMs, which I believe most people probably are, this is such a no-brainer. You can go from whatever you're doing, switching grinds in 2 seconds, because nothing's changed. My arm has the marker right on it, 1 3/4, slap it in place, just change arms, bing, bang, boom, done. But yeah, so somebody did ask me to bring that in, and they're not here today, so, but it's a great tool if you're doing bigger pieces. And these handles, I know Paul had one on some of his, and thing about Doug Thompson is he figured out that the tools won't roll if they're not round. So I love those handles. All right, I think we had a pretty informative session.
What's the grind on the bottom feeder?
This is your traditional grind. What angle is it?
Yeah.
I do not know.
It's not 40/40, it's 60.
It's not a 40/40, no.
Yeah, mine's
Oh, no.
60.
I'm gonna say it's probably closer to 60.
But you relieve a heel?
I do not. I do. And I don't use it that often. When I'm on bigger bowls and I'm starting to get in trouble with the gouge, I'll switch over. When I say bigger, 6 inches deep or deeper.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I'll make the switch.
Yeah, well, I like to relieve the heel, so the bevel is just about
Yeah,
an eighth or
it
3/16.
it makes a
and
huge difference.
Yeah.
Makes it-
makes it really maneuverable.
Yeah.
Completely different than that. So he reshopped that.
Of course I did.
So he could make it work. Because the way it comes, it's really hard to work. Because it's actually, it's actually free. There's no leads on it.
Yeah, if I lean into it a little bit too much, which I typically will, I guess that's what. I don't use them.
Wow. Yeah, you got micro bevel on there.
Yep.
What's that at?
So,
65?
so that's 60. And then what I'll do, with this one, I put a little magnet in the bottom of the one-way arm,
Yeah,
and that moves this forward just a little bit, and then I can relieve the heel.
okay.
And so without the heel getting in the way, it's super maneuverable. It's really easy if you're making a really sharp curve.
Yeah.
Turn at the bottom, between the side and the bottom of the bowl, it makes it much easier.
Yeah. Cool. Very nice.
Super maneuverable.
Very good. Right. Get up. I love it.
You don't have that?
I think I need a shirt.
I never would have thought to ever reverse it. And put the sharp end inside.
Mike Cotton should have did that.
I never ever would have thought to do that.
I never did either. Somebody shows me, and I was like, well, how stupid.
That makes, yeah.
Great. That's why you come to the meetings, to learn those tricks.
Exactly.
Schmidt, Schmidt, single minute.
That's not the smallest one.
There's one machine, so you're changing.
Four sizes. That's the next one. But that's the second.
So-
Those are.
Yes.
Just leaving now, she's in Boston. Living in France, she went to Howard in the 30s.
So what they did is they set up the same system, slammed it down, slammed it
If you change it,
Yeah,
if
it's-
you put it back in, and you're.
Must have been. I have like a,
When that was turned.
I have mine has like a jig with an angle on it, and you turn it to the
It's a
angle,
little unbalanced.
but I also have the.
Yeah.
But like stuff.
I found that, so I've got the blade that's a step up from that one, so.
You don't
I don't know why it took it so long.
The only
So I
thing you
moved the
change
headstock down into the middle of it, so
Yeah.
it reduces a lot.
If you watch the video from, and it took me forever to figure it out.
Yeah, the hard
You
part about
just-
this
you
one
don't-
was
those-
I tried to get it
those
as sound possible,
dimensions
so
should never
it's-
change.
It was the same.
And whether it's a spindle gouge or a bull gouge or a bottom feeder,
But then it's.
the only thing you change is the in and out of the arm.
You know what I try to do? I try to mark the in-out thing, but it gets off.
Yeah, and then it's like, but if you move that thing a centimeter, that's another
Not as
centimeter
fancy.
steel.
Yeah.
You're gonna take off while you're trying to get back to
See you
the
in
grind
August.
you had yesterday. Yeah.
Good idea.
Okay, I
No
guess-
one would have to use that.
All right, see you guys in October.
All right, have a good trip. Have a good trip.
I had sent you the newsletter in PDF format,
Okay,
but you sent it out in the in the other format.
did I?
Yeah, I just didn't know if you did it, if there was a mix-up.
I obviously did it on error.
Okay, just,
Yeah, I might have saved it and I already had it saved.
yeah, it's fine.
I'd like to learn how to just dress it up myself. I just can't figure out how to do it. I don't know why.
Do you have one?
Where's the,
Your size.
where's the
These
stuff?
are larges. Short sleeve.
What is this?
This long sleeve is over there.
Unity. Why do I do this all the time?
Okay, how much? 35.
Oh, hello.
Oh, and stream.
Thank you. I'm staring right at it.
Maybe,
I got the email.